morning. It's Monday, the 21st of January. Doesn't the month fly? I'm Keith Hayes. This is Rousal Radio. A half-hour look at what's going on in the region between Battle and Brighton, taking in the tiny towns. They're not so tiny. Most of them are around 100,000 people, but that's tiny in comparison to, let's say, New York. So let's stay with the tiny towns. Okay, it's 1 minute past 6, and let's take a quick look at the news that's going on this morning. First of all, let me say there is a pattern, I think, developing for coverage of local news. The people at Lewis Eye really do a first-class job of investigative reporting, something that's missing from even the national press now because of the cost of it. To investigate stuff, pay a reporter to disappear for weeks on end to try and dig stuff up is very costly. The people who run Lewis Eye, and I have no idea who they are, but they're very, very good, and I suspect must be ex-journalists, have done a very good investigating job on the scandal of the 11.5 million building programme, and I say 11.5 million because that's what Lewis District Council are going to be sued for. Are being sued for. Mind you, it's a drama that's been going on for almost 7 years, so who knows what's going to unfold yet. But also, then we have the group sections in Facebook, which are run by local people, and in this particular instance, because it is Lewis District Council and it's right at the heart of Lewis, that Lewis Present have done a very good job too in backing up. And that goes right across the county for those people who run groups. They quite often are looking for lost dogs and saying when various events will take place that are local, that the sort of thing that we couldn't possibly cover on this programme. But what they also do is that they highlight the possibility of things that are going wrong in our community, even down to sort of broken pavements and so on. And they are doing the groundwork, if you like. They're coming up with all sorts of things, and happily what we can do is we can highlight them. We can say, hey, come on, councils, we've learned about this, get cracking, do something about it. And I must say that we've got some pretty lethargic councils across the region. Perhaps what's happening is a new form of local media coverage is evolving out of the fact that the traditional media, first of all, is shrinking. It's not disappearing, but is shrinking. That it is finding its funds less for coverage of very local stuff, such as district councils, and that's leaving a gap, which Harvard University says is creating higher local taxes and less efficiency. And certainly there seems to be every evidence that that's the case. So perhaps what we're doing is inadvertently, because we're all trying in different ways to do the same thing, and that is hold our local councils to account, what we're doing is we're beginning to invent, if you like, or create a different sort of journalism which may well work to fill the gap left by the shrinkage of traditional local media. Now, very quickly, let's just move away for a moment from Lewis and look at some of the things that may affect Lewis. And I say Lewis because we're based in Lewis, but we're really covering everything from Tunbridge Wells down through Battle, Hastings, across to Seaford, Newhaven, Eastbourne, Lewis, Uckfield, and then eventually up to Gatwick. Gatwick isn't in East Sussex, but it doesn't matter. We're talking about an enclave that seems to be a collection of people. So that's where we're concentrating on. But things happen in the world that affect us here. And one that's come to light in the last few days is that a couple of years or so ago, the government made it illegal for you to be charged for using a credit card. So, in other words, if you went into a store or went to purchase something and it said, we're charging you £3 for the use of a credit card, that was deemed to be illegal, and you can't do it. Traders can't do it. You cannot be charged for using a credit card. You pay the price through the credit card. Credit card companies can collect their pound of flesh, but the trader can't add on an extra sort of £1, £2, £3 if you pay by card. That is illegal. And apparently an awful lot of people haven't either paid attention or claiming they didn't know, and they're being putting on charges for credit card payments. So if somebody says to you, when you're buying a credit card, or there's a notice that says, for the use of a credit card, it is X amount, it's illegal. Don't pay it. In fact, if you've done it before, you can demand the money back. The mess on Brexit continues, indicating just how dreadful we got in terms of leadership. It doesn't matter whether you're pro, for, against, whatever your stance on Brexit, and there are many, many things. Whatever the outcome, and who knows what the outcome is going to be, but our politicians have really been quite atrocious and show that they are completely incapable of handling the whole thing. And I'm not talking about just the government. I'm talking about all those people who decided that they wanted their own way, and they stamped their little feet. And if they weren't going to get it, they were going to bring the government down. Well, thanks very much. That really helped all of us. So Brexit creates problems still, which are rebounding. Now, one of the things that I think that we need to be concerned about is Boris Johnson, who is very ambitious, of course, and one knows that he's been pointing at the leadership of the Conservative Party for quite some considerable time and creating problems. He made a speech the other day and laid out what his vision would be if he became leader. And one of the things was that he wanted a root and branch turf out of our present political system and our present political masters, and a restructuring right the way across the board. Now, basically, he was concerned, I suppose, about the House of Lords and how many people in the House of Commons and so on and so forth. But he also included district and county councils, and said that they needed looking at too, and isn't he right? But one of his ideas was that there would be no more council taxes, that taxes would be all bundled up, given to local people to spend, local council to spend, and that would be that. Well, there is some merit in some of what he says, but can you imagine, with what's going on here, with £11.5 million lawsuit against Lewis District Council, is they seem, and from the investigation done by Lewis Eye, they seem to have been completely incapable of handling that money. So if Boris's idea is to give them more cash, then we've got a problem. Mind you, Boris isn't leader yet. Who knows what's going to happen? But anyway, that's something that's happening at a national level that's likely to impact on us in the future. There was a bomb in Londonderry, or Derry, depending upon your point of view, on Saturday night. A bit scary, because one of the issues has been the border with Ireland for the Brexit thing. Apparently it was a bit amateurish, but nonetheless, an amateur bomb can kill just as much as a professional bomb, and that is a bit disconcerting that bombing has come back in to Northern Ireland. And then there's the issue, of course, of Caris locally, and we'll go into that, I think, after we've had a little music and give me a chance to clear my throat. And anyway, we'll be going for 9 minutes, 10 minutes without any. So let's take a look at something we haven't played before, and it's called Down with Paradise, and why not? Well, that was a little bit of paradise. Don't we need paradise right now with what's going on in the world? It's very disappointing, I suppose, that we have in a modern society managed to get ourselves into such a muck, and it doesn't matter whether it's at national or local level, and for that matter, international. It looks as if the wheels are coming off the Trump campaign. I've actually had my reservations about criticising Trump too much, because if that's what the American people wanted, that's indeed what they should have. But it looks now as if the shutdown of government, because it's a standoff between Trump wanting money for his wall and the congressional approval of the budget for public services, is at a standoff, and that things just aren't working, which means a lot of people are not in work at the moment, are out of jobs, services aren't working, the whole country is paralysed and a bit of a mess. But Canada is relatively quiet at the moment. I don't know what's going on there. But they all are the result of a backlash against the establishment, against the established parties. And that's exactly really, in many ways, what's happened here. It's not Theresa May's government, it's the whole bundle of them. They just have got on with that bubble, as it's called, in Westminster. They've looked at things that have affected them. They've enjoyed themselves in debate, because that's the one thing that politicians are very good at, debating. And they've ignored absolutely everything else. And it eventually, of course, such a house of cards comes tumbling down. And at the moment, it is tumbling down. What's going to happen? Heaven only knows. But one thing I would say is we have an opportunity in Lewis, and forgive me, people from Battle to Brighton, because I'm concentrating on Lewis again, but indeed these sort of things will affect you. In Lewis, in May, we have a local election. And I think that it's, hopefully, some people will poke their head above the parapet, and hopefully the electorate won't be fooled again, or the way that many of us have been fooled throughout the world, and put this lot back in. Now, when I say that, there are some very decent individual people on this council. Whether they should be on the council or not is another matter. Being a decent person and being rather nice isn't necessarily a qualification for the hurly-burly world of politics. But the one thing that is worrying about local government is that the executive, the people who actually call the shots and actually sign the checks and send out the bills and do the administration, are really twisting the elected people around their little finger. And that doesn't even come from me. That comes from my spies in the council. There's something called the Scrutiny Committee. And the only thing that it could come up with last time, apparently, is that the telephone system isn't working at Lewis District Council. Well, it pointed it out, and it brought in an official, and the official said blah, 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 and the telephone system still isn't working. Now, that's the telephone system. And when you consider that they have control and charge and responsibility for a whole range of services to us, it doesn't build a great deal of confidence in us, the voter, but actually the taxpayer, that we are faced with this sort of charge, and that we are getting that sort of service. And I just go back to what I said a little earlier in this program, is Harvard University took a survey of the withdrawal of local media from being the watchdog of local politics. And primarily they started this in the States, but then they were so alarmed that it's been done in the United Kingdom as well. And what it shows is that the less local media you have, less local coverage, all those people, it's all the fault of the media. Yeah, well, when we aren't here, then things start to fall apart. And that's when council taxes rise and efficiency falls. Well, efficiency has fallen, and it's demonstrable. There is little that goes on at Lewis District Council, Lewis and Eastbourne District Council now. that shows any sort of efficiency at all. Council tax? Well, we're waiting to see how much it's going to go up. It's probably going to go up as much as they possibly can push, because they're going to have to pay somehow for at least £1 million to defend themselves against a suit by Caris, as a property development company, for whom Caris say that they reneged on a deal. And it was a controversial deal of 49 sites, which the council put up for sale. I think it was 2011, so some considerable time ago. And amongst those 49 sites was a parking lot, a public loo, an open field, apart from, in fairness, some prime building ground and property. Well, that deal has fallen through. The Caris, the company, are saying, hey, listen, it cost us quite a bit of money to start developing this thing, and the fact that you've pulled out now isn't our fault. And what we want compensation, and we're claiming £11.5 million. Now, even to defend that's £500,000 to £1 million, depending on who you talk about. But rather laughably, last week, somebody said, it's going to cost £1 million to defend, and one councillor very quickly came back and said, no, it's only 500,000. Oh, thanks, it's only £500,000. So, well, first of all, because of this whole issue, we got a big bill to pay. We, the taxpayer, have got a big bill to pay. And if, in fact, the council should lose the suit and £11.5 million is awarded to Caris, then we've got the costs on top of that. So you're talking about anywhere from 13 to 14 million. And that's no small change by anybody's imagination. Now, the whole thing is because the council started this project off in secrecy, and despite the fact that people urged them to be open about it, they weren't. So we'll just take a little look at what the folk at Lewis Eye is a website investigative reporting unit, and they do a very good job. And we'll just go over what Lewis Eye say, because they say this whole fiasco could have been concluded for the cost of £6 and half an hour's work. My goodness me. Well, let's go to the folks at Bensound. Bensound, a very, very good group. Bensound produce some terrific music, and they allow people such as us who don't make any money out of what we do to use their music for free. And some of it is very good, and some of it you'll never hear unless you actually listen to programs like this. So this one is from Bensound, and it's called Acoustic Breeze. Well, I doubt if that's going to shock you out of bed, but it's rather pleasant. And that's acoustic breeze from the people at Bensound. Now, just before we go back to the question of Lewes District Council being sued for $11.5 million, I'd like to reiterate that I think, and I only think, and it's only an opinion, and some people will want to shoot me down, and others will say blah, 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 but Harvard University carried out a survey which spilled over into the UK, which found that where local media started to shrink, so the inefficiency of local councils and the cost of local councils increased. That seems to be the case here. Certainly, local media has had not any real great fault of its own, but to reduce its coverage, its close examination of district and town councils, and also to some extent the county council. The cost of the councils has risen and continues to rise. The efficiency has fallen, and as a consequence, the citizen is not getting good value for money. One might say, well, the executive, that is the people, who are paying out this cash, who are running the place, that are managing the services for Lewes and Eastbourne now because of that silly merger. I say silly merger, which shows an editorial bias. But what the hell? I don't care. I think it was a silly merger, and there are several other councils that are trying it around the country, and I think they should beware. But once again, you see, what happened was that was done without any reference whatsoever to the electorate. And, if decisions like that can be made, then we've got a real problem with the executive. Because supposedly the politicians are the people that run the executive. The executive do what the politicians ask them to do. Politicians are supposed to set policy. But it seems that in Lewes and Eastbourne anyway, and from my correspondence around the southern coast here, it's happening in all sorts of other places, there is little, if any, survey monitoring of what the executive get up to. They do what they want, and they get on with it, and the politicians are irrelevant. So democracy is taking a real tumble there. So hopefully what's happening is that because of the groups that appear on Facebook, such as Lewes Present, and there are several more in various tiny towns, in New Haven, Eastbourne, Pevensey, Hastings, Battle, and so on and so forth, where groups set up and they look at various things in their community. Sometimes it's just when the Women's Institute meeting is going on, or sometimes that somebody is looking for a lost cat. But other times they come across things that wouldn't be highlighted otherwise, and that can be taken up by certainly by us. Not that we can investigate, we're too small, we don't have those sort of facilities, but what we can do is we can highlight these things so that the politicians have to eventually make some sort of explanation, and then the executive have to make some sort of explanation. Because the one thing about Lewes District Council is it has been mired, and still is, in secrecy. Everything it does is covert. And you can never find anything out. And they've always got the client confidentiality, patient confidentiality. Confidentiality knows that. What it is it's hiding from the public. It's not allowing themselves to be scrutinised, either by the politicians, apparently, or by the general public. And that's what happened with this Caris issue, where 49 sites were put up for grabs. Caris went into partnership with the council to build houses, luxury houses with a certain amount of socially affordable housing. There were petitions because buildings, high-rise buildings were going up in various places, like the parking lot at Bishopston, out towards out towards the eastern part of the western part of Lewes, in open fields and so on. And it just turns out that they couldn't do it anyway because there is a covenant on those pieces of property. You can't build above a certain height, and in some cases you can't build at all. And it would have taken £3 for both Carys and the council, and I would have thought that this to some extent might be a bit of a defence of the council, £3 to go to the land registry and find out that those pieces of property they couldn't build on. Well, £3. So for two pieces of land, £6 and perhaps half an hour's work. And none of them did it. And it was left to somebody from Lewis Eye, which is a non-profit organisation. It's just a group of citizens, I suspect, possibly ex-journalists, to do the investigation and come up with a simple answer, £6. And now it could cost us up to 12 or 13 million. All because of secrecy. There was no public consultation. In many ways, it was reduced to just 3 people in the council, in cabinet. Oh, that wonderful word, cabinet, who were making all the decisions, and now the rest of us have got caught out. Well, if this isn't a scandal, and a scandal that's brewing to some sort of explosion, I would think, then nothing is. And we most certainly will try to keep an eye on it. And hopefully the people at Lewis Eye will come up with even more stuff. But I think there is enough to be talked about that we'll take this up again tomorrow morning, because we've run out of time this morning. So, thank you for being with me. Thank you for helping to support something like this, but also to support the groups that really do the groundwork. This is real citizen journalism. It's nothing to do with some of the stuff where people dramatically take a picture on their iPhone and rush it to a newspaper. This is where people have real concerns. And if they see garbage tipped into a back of a lane, they're able to say, hey, who did that? And we're able to say, yes, who did do that? Come on, council, find out. And to those people who are doing the fly tipping, watch out, because now we've got a different form of journalism which just might work. It might just work. And if it does, let's hope that the rest of the country might just realise what is a possibility and to develop it right across Britain. And wouldn't that be marvellous if something that came out of Lewis for local media, local people-driven media, along with potty little radio stations like this, managed to start to do the big job that was done in the past by big media, which no longer exists. A dream? Let's hope not. Toodle pip.